Hey y'all, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I am here with Kevin Mellon. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing great, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Great. Kevin, you have such an extensive career. You've worked on Archer, Hitmonkey, you do a slew of music videos. Can you kind of break down what it is you do?
So yeah, I kind of do a little bit of everything. Jack of all trades, trying to master all of them. So I spent the thing most people would know me for, or at least be, oh, okay, I've seen that, is I spent 10 seasons storyboarding and storyboard supervising and directing on Archer, the spy comedy for FX and later FXX. So that was the main majority of the last 12 years. Aside from that, I've spent the last 3 to 4 years, since 2020, basically, directing on Hitmonkey, an animated cartoon based on the little-known Marvel character, and that's on Hulu right now. Season 2 comes out July 15th, so please go watch that. Aside from that, I have storyboarded on The Vampire Diaries for the last 3 seasons of that. I storyboarded on the first couple seasons of Black Lightning, Legacies, Dynasty. All of those are CW shows, for those of you who, were CW fans. Done a little bit for a show called Bigger on BET. And then also I started out doing all this was I started out making comic books. I have been a fan of and a lover of comic books since I was a small child. Started drawing them as soon as I figured out how to staple paper and fold it in half and make my own. Yeah. I was drawing my own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. And so that's just been that's kind of, I always tell people, no matter what medium I'm working in, I'm always trying to tell stories, but comic books, graphic novels, the sequential art medium is, to me, the perfect storytelling medium. It's one of the ones that involves the audience the most, I think. But anyway, so that's kind of how we got here. The industry meaning TV and film. Most people may not know, but some of you might. There was a bunch of strikes last year. There was a bunch of work stoppages. A bunch of stuff happened with companies behind the scenes, and me and thousands of other artists, directors, storytellers throughout the medium, in not only in television but also in games, are out of work right now, and I am one of them. So I've just been kind of making my way. So I've spent the last few months directing music videos, directing short films, making new comics, working on music, and just kind of trying to fill my time as best I can, as productive as I can, while the world kind of resets itself.
Yeah. Now, 10 years with Archer, you got Hitmonkey, yeah, which is with a big studio, well, a big distributor, right? And now that you're freelancing on your own, yeah, there's definitely going to be some downfalls with that, but is there some freedom that you're enjoying with that process?
Sleeping in is glorious. I can't lie, and I never made it a secret to any of my producers or my bosses that I worked for over the last 12 plus years of working in television. I hate getting up at 8 in the morning. I hate sitting at a desk at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was never fun. The job is fun. The people are fun, but I love my sleep. And even if I go to bed early, like early meaning, 10, 11 p.m., I still want to sleep till like 10 and in the morning. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially I'm old as fuck now. So like, I got to get up and pee a couple times in the night, which, pardon me, if we're not cursing here, you can bleep me out. But, it's like, I'm getting up and I'm peeing and I'm drinking some water and I'm, it's like, whatever, looking outside, making sure that nothing's going on, and then going back to bed. So, but honestly, I would say that's a bit of a jokey answer, even as much truth as there is. I like the real answer is the freedom is I am my own boss, but that is also the peril, because I am my own boss, and I've been the boss of other people for the last, anywhere from like 5 to 8 years, depending on how you count it, as far as like, hiring storyboard artists, mentoring storyboard artists, then moving into directing, stuff like that. So me being my own boss means if I don't get enough stuff done in the day, then that has consequences for the next day. And that's always true. But when you have a 9 to 5 and you have a team of, anywhere from 20 to 100 people depending on you, it's a little bit more motivation. Whereas when when it's just me, I'm sitting there going like, hey, I can put it off a little bit. So that's the peril. But when it's just me, that's also the beauty of it is like, oh God, I don't have 20 people that I have to answer questions for all day. I don't have 100 people like waiting on me to send an email. You know what I mean? Like that. So that's, good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be hard to stick with that focus, especially when it's you clicking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and the other thing too, sorry, just real quick. The other thing too is like, as far as like life changes go, it's like I was in Atlanta for those 12 years. I moved in 2012 to work on Archer. Like I had no aspirations of working in television. And then the opportunity came to work on Archer. And I was like, I could do that. I want to do that because it was my favorite show at the time. And it's still one of my top shows. So it's one of those things where I had a point with this and I will find my way around to it. But anyways, it's one of those things where I put myself into a place where I knew what the game was. And so now with like not having that, and trying to make things on my own and trying to forge new paths and stuff like that, I at least have an infrastructure like Dead Plus of like, this is what a normal production pipeline looks like every single day. That's with anywhere from 100 or 200 people. I'm one person. That's not a problem. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, there is a bit of a like, there's an internalized skill set there, much like Liam Neeson, where it's like, I have a very special set of skills, where, I can, but it's like, when I forget what I'm doing, quote unquote, you know what I mean? I can fall back on like, okay, well then go do this while you're treading water over here. You can go do this other thing. So,
yeah. You bring up a great point with working in Atlanta for 12 years. Anybody who watches Archer is very familiar with the Georgia Peach at the end. Yeah. Obviously, it's becoming a bigger town for film production. How has that changed recently? Do you feel it's a little bit more on the peak of production in comparison to Hollywood? Is what I'm trying to say.
I got the question, and I could say yes or no, but it's kind of more nuanced than that. Okay. The way I would put it is, it's so when you go out to eat with your family, you either have a place in mind or you have a list of choices. So it used to be that LA and Hollywood was the only place. You know what I mean? For lack of a better term, just bear with me on the metaphor. Whereas now you've got, it would say Hollywood was McDonald's. Now you've got Wendy's, you've got Five Guys, you've got New Mexico, Arizona, you've got Atlanta, you've got, I'm in Kansas City now. Kansas City is trying to come up. So it's like a little mom and pop chain that's just starting on its own. You know what I mean? And it's going to take years for it to get anywhere, but it's trying, and you've got, Canada. Canada's huge. Obviously tons of stuff has been done there over the last like 40 years. So it's one of those things where what I would say is Atlanta, Kansas City being the way to kind of drive the thing home is like Kansas City is in the place now in 2024 where Atlanta was in about 2008. And 2008, 2009 is when The Walking Dead came out and blew the fuck up, right? Yeah. So we just need that show, Whereas Atlanta doesn't need that show. What it needs now is to keep people, because the biggest thing is it's getting to be as expensive as, it's still cheaper than LA and New York and Canada, but it's getting up there. And so that, I think, is the plus, cheaper. The bad side, it's getting more expensive. Like when I just left in November, and I didn't realize how much until I was looking at a lot of my bills as I was closing stuff out. I was like, oh my God, this is so much higher than it was like 2 years ago. You know what I mean? And some of that's inflation and some pandemic pricing and all, like, because people still haven't dropped prices after pandemic and all that. There's so much other nonsense that goes into it. But the bonus is Atlanta is still a small, big city, or a big, small city. And Kansas City is a small city that wants to be big, So like, I'm not trying to make it about where I'm at, but like having seen both sides, it's kind of like, I love Atlanta. I think Atlanta is a wonderful place to live. I love the city itself. Like, and I'm not talking about like, if you're OTP, like, nobody wants to be there. That's nonsense. But if you're ITP, if you're in the actual city, if you're within the limits, if you're near, like, the place, like the good, cool neighborhoods. And that's a subjective statement. People will tell me neighborhood, you know what I mean? But you're going to have a good time. You're going to feel at home. You're going to be able to walk a block or two or a half a mile and be in a completely other kind of neighborhood that's fun and you love. And there's happens to be celebrities all over the fucking place just having a meal because it's not LA. So they can sit there and it was like, I remember going to a bar when Jason Momoa was filming, I forget what show it was. I think it had Red in the title. It was one of those TV shows he did like 5-6 years ago. Mm-hmm. But he would go hang out at this bar that we all just hung out at. And so he was there. And he's just hanging out, and he had to stop because people started coming out just to see when he was there. And so but that's not the norm. Whereas I feel like in like other places, that's more the thing. You get like in LA and New York, you get those paparazzi things. You get people like gawking and making a big deal. Whereas Atlanta is still, small enough to have people be like, oh, that's Lawrence Fishburne. Right on.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I mean, just as an outsider, watching how much over the last maybe 2 decades, production is not centralized anymore. It feels like it's kind of wherever the tax breaks are, or maybe it's just easier to film on location than it was before, just with technology catching up. So it's just very
tax breaks. Honestly, dude, the location is one thing, but tax breaks are honestly the make or break for so much stuff. What most people don't realize is, those. Just to give the bare bones, talk to me like I'm 5 version of what tax break means for people. And I don't know how much you cover this on your show, but you spend $1 in Georgia, you get 30 cents back. That's huge. So they spend $1 million, they get $300K back. So you want to know why so much shit shot in Georgia? That's why. You want to know why so much stuff is shot in Canada? That's why. You know what I mean? And plus the thing about Atlanta and the thing about, Vancouver and all that is they don't. Atlanta has its skyline and all that, but it kind of looks like everything. It kind of looks like New York. It kind of looks like LA. Same with Vancouver. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's parts of Scotland where they do for some of the older New York streets, stuff like that. They go wherever they can.
Yeah, which always cracks me up.
Well, let's talk about your early career. You went to the Kubert, I believe it's called, school for cartoon and graphic arts. Why did you choose to go to school for that? What was it that you worked on there?
I didn't want to take any bullshit math or science classes or anything, man. I didn't want to go to I wanted to go to an art school and all the art institutes and all these other classes. At least, I'm old, I'm 45. So we're talking 25 years ago, when I'm graduating high school, and all that. And I delayed going to college because I was in a band and I was like, the band's going to make it. And then as bands do, they break up and I was heartbroken and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to college. But I didn't want to go to a regular school. I looked at all these regular schools and I was like, you're going to make me take art history. And I don't give a fuck about art history. I do. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things of where I'm paying my money, I can go to the library and learn about art history. I need to learn how to work. I need to learn I need deadlines. I need to learn how to draw. I need to be around my peers. So when I found I had seen ads, the Kubert School was started in the late 70s very short version, by a guy named Joe Kubert. He started drawing comics professionally at DC when he was 13. And this is in the whatever. Yeah. So he went through the ranks, and by the 70s, in the late 70s, he was in his late 40s. So he decided to start a school. So he started a school in Dover, New Jersey, in the late 70s. I had seen ads for it ever since I was a kid, reading comics. They would just have these ads and would see all these names of people who I was reading comics drawn by and stuff like that. So it was always in the back of my mind. So when it came time to be all right, mom and dad, I'm going to go to college. Let's look at schools. And I looked at a bunch of places. I was real close on weirdly being in Kansas City, the Kansas City Art Institute wasn't an option because it was too expensive. It was 17, 18 grand a year, which hella cheap now compared to all other schools. But at the time it was 18 grand a year, something like that. And I could go to New Jersey and live there for less than that. You know what I mean? So that kind of was a thing. And then but the main thing was, and the why I chose that school and the why I would tell people to think really hard about where they go to school. I don't care if they go to Kubert or not. It doesn't matter where they go. Well, it does matter because don't spend $100 grand a year. But there's people with the amount of debt that a lawyer or a doctor has, but they're artists and they're never going to make that back. It's crazy to me. Anyways, I won't mention any schools, but I looked at it as the way their curriculum was structured was 10 classes a week, 10 deadlines. You didn't necessarily have 10 deadlines a week. There was great confluence. the teachers tried not to do that, but you could have anywhere from like 3 to 6 deadlines a week sometimes, and then you'd go weeks without deadlines, which is exactly how freelance life works. You know what I mean? And so I loved that. I loved that it was working professionals. And we're talking about me trying to get information on this school and all that. I tracked down they were talking like late 90s. And so me on my friggin' like Gateway computer or whatever the heck that brand was, and like using AOL Instant Messenger, I'm trying to track down people who went to the school. And so I tracked down a couple and I just was blind emailing people, and I got a couple people to respond to me. And the biggest thing I got out of it is one dude said, it was formative and I will never regret going. The best piece of advice that I can give to you is you get out of it what you put into it. And that honestly is one of those things that I have tried to maintain to this day about everything, but it really was especially important about college because I went into that school with a mindset of work. And if I don't put in anything into it, nothing will come back to me. And so that's why I went there. And I'm especially glad at the time. I mean, while Joe didn't pass away for another like 10 or 12 years, I had Joe as a teacher. So that was informative. I had greats like Erwin Hazen and Hi Eisman, like guys, like old school guys who worked in like the 40s, 50s, came up under the dudes who invented the medium. You know what I mean? They came up under them. Yeah. So like that was important, and like one of my favorite stories to tell is I remember I was highly under the influence of Jeff Scott Campbell at the time. I'm sorry, I didn't even take a drink here.
You're good.
I was highly in the, Danger Girl was big and all that. And I remember doing this kind of like Danger Girl inspired page. Like it looked nothing like Jeff Scott Campbell, just for the audience who can't see any of this, obviously, but not that you're seeing it either, but but it was influenced by that. And I was, doing all these kind of like tricks with the layouts and stuff like that. And I walked up and I took it up to Erwin Hazen, the creator of Dondi, for those who want to Google him. Adorable man, loved him, very funny. I took it up to him. He took one glance at the page and he's like, "You're very clever." I was like, "Oh, fuck yeah, awesome. Stop it. Knock it off." That was his critique.
Taking notes.
And I just looked at him and I was like, "You got it, Erwin." And I went back and I redid the shit. You know what I mean? Like he saw through the bullshit. He saw I was just doing a clever page design. He saw that I wasn't telling a story. He saw that I wasn't doing anything emotional or and there is a place for that sort of page layout and page design, but he was very kind about it, but also just like, get out of here with your nonsense. Go give me something I can look at. You know what I mean? Like, and
you have to do the foundational stuff before you can go crazy.
Yeah. And he knew that I knew the foundational stuff. That's the other thing too. And Hi Eisman was our lettering teacher, and I'll be forever grateful to Hi's lettering class. A lot of people hated it, but so didn't feel they listen when Hi explained over and over again that lettering is drawing. It's not writing. It's drawing. You are drawing an A. You are drawing a what? You know what I mean? And even to this last week, I was thinking about a lot about Hi because I found a website that I can kind of like spit out quick and dirty fonts of my handwriting, which has been I'm like, oh, this changes everything, because like I can sit here like instead of spending like hours and hours that I don't have making my own font, I can make a bunch of like different ones for my handwriting that kind of encompass my little quirks, combine them, so anyways, I was thinking a lot about Hi this last week because of that. So yeah, that's the very long why I went to the Kubert school. And I believe it still is a 3-year school. It's definitely 3 years at the time. I went all 3 years, graduated. Much like most classes, there's a huge attrition. It's just that ours, we started with, so I forget the number, but I want to say we started with 107 my first year, then graduated like 20 of us. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's weeding them out pretty good.
Which, when you look at normal colleges, that's pretty normal. It's like they'll start with 10,000 and then graduate like 5. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, yeah, but yeah.
So nowadays with the gig economy, and a lot of these younger artists feel like they could just get right into it. What would you say? Do you feel like they need to go to art school? There's something there that they're missing out on?
It's such an individual question, but I will be blunt and say no. I don't think you need art school. But I will say that if you need guidance and you need structure and you need accountability, then yes, you should definitely go to art school, because if you lack those things and you are self-aware enough to know that you lack those things, then yes, put yourself in situations where you are paying and when you fuck up, you know that you just wasted 10 grand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing is a huge motivator. The other aspect of that is like a lot of times they end up wasting their parents 10 grand. So that's a different kind of thing. But like that's a whole other argument. But what I would say is the quote that I always kind of use stupidly, because most people, a lot of the younger kids haven't watched the movie yet, but is the thing from Good Will Hunting where he's like, I got, you paid 90 grand for an education I got for $5 in late fees at the library. We have YouTube. We have all these resources. Even if you're sitting there and you've exhausted all the free stuff on YouTube, there's Skillshare. There's so many other places that have hundreds and thousands of courses that are way less and will not put you in the massive amount of debt that going to a normal university or specialized art school will. So.
Very well put.
You can spend a couple thousand versus spending, I mean, fuck, what is SCAD costs now? Like 40 grand a year, 50, whatever it is. I don't know. But it's one of those things where you have kids coming out of a 4-year school where after the school plus, living costs and all that, they've spent 150, they've spent a crazy amount of money. So.
Yeah. Out of college.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. If you want to keep going, that's good.
No, I just say, or like they're sitting there, with trying to figure out, like I have friends who shall remain nameless, but who graduated from SCAD and went on to teach at SCAD and are still paying off SCAD. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
And I'm not dogging SCAD as again, I have friends that teach there. I respect what they do. I think I look at the cost versus reward. And it's one of those things where if you take it back and make it personal, I totally could have skipped college. I could have skipped going to the Kubert school. I was working at warehouses, and I was working warehouses from like 6 to like 3 a.m. Then I would get off and I would draw and then go to bed, and then I would wake up at like noon and then draw and then go to work at the warehouse at 6. And I did that for, it's like from like the time I was like 18 till I went to the Kubert school, like late, I was almost 20, 21. Mm-hmm. Because I waited a little while and all that, but it's like, I thought I was going to be the shittiest person at the school. And I was like, I need to woodshed. I need to fucking get better. And I was making pages, sketchbook. You know what I mean? Not tooting my own horn, but most people don't do that. So I went into the school with a higher level of like, I wasn't any good, by the way. I'm just letting you know, I was not good, but I went in at a higher level than most of the other people who went to the school. So, and there was a couple other people like that. None of us were any good, by the way. But we got better, and a bunch. Some of them are working professionals. Some have gone to do other things, and that's fine. But it's one of those things where, like, if you are not that type of person, if you are that type of person where you're sitting there and woodshedding and like doing all the practice on your own, that's where I would say, really evaluate what school can do for you, or evaluate like how much school you need, So it'd be a thing where it's like, go for a year, fuck around, find out, and then then get on with your life. You know what I mean? Go find work, go make a portfolio, meet the people you want to be friends with and stay in touch with, and then fuck off and do something else,
Yeah. Wow. Great point. You have a very long career. You have a lot of those early jobs, but of course the first big one that we all 12 years of it is Archer. Yeah. Now, a lot of people hear storyboarding, they could picture what it is, right? And I've interviewed a lot of comic book writers, and they talk about how storyboarding is a back and forth for them. Can you explain what that is, what the process is?
Sure. Storyboarding is pre-visualizing and drawing the show before the show gets made. So for every animated television show that you were watching, there is a roughly drawn. Well, and now it would be more roughly. There's a lot of Blender pre-visualization and stuff, 3D previs. So there's a rough version of the show that exists, whether it's drawn by hand or previs on computer. It doesn't matter. It's all the same process, just different tools. So when you watch an episode of Archer and you're watching Archer stand there and gesture with his hands and point at things, that has all been storyboarded out before it gets to what you see on the TV show. That is what we do, whether it's gestures for hands, fight scenes, drawing cars, car chases. I spent a lot of my life, the last 12 years, drawing car chases and fight scenes. So that was kind of my thing for a lot of it, and so all of that has to be boarded out. And there are totally details that are added in by animation. There's also a lot of stuff that gets cut because of money and budget, or whatever, stuff like that. Money and time. Money and time is always the huge reason stuff doesn't. But for a storyboard artist, so when you imagine, even if you are not a visual person, just imagine a stick figure version of Archer, where it's circle heads and stick bodies. We drew a little bit better than that, but at its worst, the show has to be drawn out like that. So everyone else that after us in the pipeline, which is 2D animators, character designers, background painters, 3D animators, 3D designers, 3D rigging, all that stuff. Everyone that comes after us, like. So imagine, the pipeline for is the writer, then you have the director, and then you have storyboards. It's not credited that way in television a lot, but that's how it is. Like, that is literally what it is, and it's an unfortunate It's an unfortunate thing about how people's egos work. Oftentimes storyboard artists are buried amongst other things, but storyboard artists are, and I'm going to say my controversial bit here that people yell at me and get mad about, but it's storyboard artists are co-writers and they are co-directors. It's what we do. It is literally what we do. Just because you told me, hey, make an action scene cool, doesn't mean you directed it. I have to go and make an action scene cool, and I have to board it out. I have to do the research. I have to figure it out. I have to do the camera work, and then I present it to you. And then you say, that's great, give it to the stunt team. You know what I mean? Or that's great, give it to the, I worked with very good directors and producers on a lot of different things. So I'm not throwing them under the bus. But what I'm saying is the people who tell you they don't use storyboard artists are often lying, or you can tell because their movies aren't any good, or their TV shows aren't that, or their TV shows are just soap opera talking heads and they don't need it. So, but storyboarding at its very, very bare base is a very rough drawn, sketchy version of the final animation that you're seeing. And fortunately with the internet, there's so much proliferation of seeing rough boards go around now these days. You can find it pretty easily and get a pretty good example of what people are doing. And storyboards these days are way more high tech than they were even 5 years ago, let alone 12 years ago when I started out. So,
yeah, it
storyboards.
Sounds like,
sorry.
Well, it sounds like storyboarding is kind of the transitional phase from truly the creation into the production, right? Where things are just in the machine and need to look like this. Like, you guys storyboarders are working the most with the directors and making sure the shots look right and stuff like that.
So yeah, that's actually a really good, good on you to acknowledge, to see that. Is that so? Like, I worked on Vampire Diaries for 3 seasons, which was season 6 through season 8, the end season, and I was listed under the art department, but I rarely talked to, if I ever even met anyone from the art department on that show. I worked with directors and producers and some deep directors of photography, cinematographers, lighting guys, the electricians. Like, I worked with all them because those are the people that are, like, when they show up on that day to shoot it, they're looking at my boards going, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. They've got a plan. And I'm not saying they're shooting my boards exactly. Oftentimes they didn't. But my boards were taking what was in the script and making it an actionable item for both people on the set and people in the budget behind the scenes. The biggest reason, nobody ever told me this, is I just figured this out, and I've never had that. I should at some point talk to my old producers on Vampire Diaries and make sure that I'm wrong, or make sure I'm not wrong. But I firmly believe that a live action storyboard artist in television's role is less about telling the story and more about showing them how much it'll cost to make.
Yeah.
So I do believe it is wholly storytelling. It is wholly storytelling.
Yeah.
But I have no problem telling you that I don't know why they had me show up some days, because they would show up. I would show up and they would have an iPhone full of photos of all the shit that they were wanting me to do. And I'd be like, I'm happy to redraw all this for you and take the money, but you don't need it. And they're like, hey, no, just go do your thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I would go do it. And I'm not saying I would sometimes use what they gave me, but that's also, I think, why they liked me is I would use what they gave me sometimes, but then I would also sit there and be like, yeah, that's fine, but that's a phone. I can draw a cool angle that maybe they can't quite get, you know what I mean? And I think the other part of it too is like, there is amongst production people, there's a bit of a love affair with that kind of like, oh man, look, it's a drawing. It looks like a comic book. It's so cool. They don't read comics. They don't give a fuck about a comic, but they like seeing that. You know what I mean? But the other end of it that I realized very quickly is what I already said, but I'll explain it further, is that, you know, especially on Vampire Diaries and Vampire Diaries in those later seasons, there was so much effects heavy stuff that they would often have me board stuff just to show two departments, vis effects and accounting. So they would, and that's it. Like they needed accounting to see what they could do, so that they could see if they had the budget for it and then go from there. Like, and honestly, like it was way cheaper to spend, you know, anywhere from $1,000 to more than a couple grand on me than to spend a bunch of time shooting something with the actors, with the stunt team, with all that, and then find out that they don't have the money for vis effects.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you know, and I'm not trying to downplay my job. I'm just trying to say that the reality of making this stuff is sometimes it pays you really well to be the guy that's the cheapest one to figure out what they don't want to do. You know what I mean?
You got to kind of be the parents that are like, hey, let's be realistic. You don't need 2 Legos. You could just buy the one. We're okay.
They do that. Like that's what, you know, production managers do. That's what line producers. That's really what line producers all day, you know, like those are the fucking saviors of shoots, you know, and unit production managers, UPMs, you know, those are the people. And I loved all the ones I worked with. I wish I still kept in touch with them. But you know, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I forget what got me on that rabbit hole of your what your question was. I apologize.
No problem. Yeah, we were just talking about storyboarding and how important they were to both live action and animation.
Oh yeah, and just to circle back to the animation thing. With the animation thing, is so the other thing that I say that kind of irks some people sometimes, but I have no problem repeating it, is a script is not a television show. A script is not a script is not a comic book. Yeah. The closest you get to a script being the final thing is if you're writing a novel and then you're writing prose. So if you want your script to be exactly what people do, then go into novel writing, go into fiction, go into nonfiction, whatever. A script as written in, you know, script format, that is not a TV show. It is I'm definitely one of those people that I view it as it is a blueprint, it is a guidebook, it is it's when you get lost, you refer back to, okay, we totally need to go back to the intent here and find our way again. You know what I mean? Okay. But also the script, you know, it isn't, I've worked on plenty of things where the script has, I actually did a talk over pandemic called "The Script is a Problem." And excuse me, sorry. Mm-hmm. Drank my drink a little too fast. It's called "The Script is a Problem" for a reason, because I view my job and I view everyone working on, if you're working on a comic, you're working on a TV show, you're working on a film, every aspect of production is a problem that has to be solved. So when you are writing a script, you have a pitch and you pitch an episode. You have to solve how the characters get through that episode. Then you write it. Say you've gotten through all those problem solvings, and then you write the script and you're like, yay, the script got approved. Well, I get the script, and the script is a problem because I have to figure out how to make this thing into what is going to be a television show. So I have to take into account what the script is asking me to do versus the realities of, like, okay, in case of Archer, there's often anywhere from 6 to 8 people talking in a room at one time. That's a problem. It's a funny script.
It's the best scenes.
It's right. It's a fucking, it's one of the best episodes, and one of the ones that, you know, we won an Emmy for, is where there's like 6 of them trapped in an elevator for 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that episode was a fucking pain in the ass to storyboard. Oh, but we did it, and you know, and it's one of those things where, yeah, it's a great episode, but there's so many problems to solve, and a lot of them, and it's one of those things where it's like the script was great on the page, but it's a fucking problem, and so we had to solve it. So we have fortunately had a really good team, really good directors, really, you know, it's like, and I'm sitting there with my team, with my directors, and we're just beating the shit out of it, going like, okay, this is a problem because this person talks to this person, but then they reach over and do this, and that's a problem because they're nowhere near this person earlier in the episode. So do we move them, or do we, you know what I mean? So you have to figure out all of those logistics. In an elevator, it's actually much harder than it is if they were just in a normal room.
Yeah. Especially with that cast that's meant to be very moving, and Archer, of course, is going to do something silly or whatever, you know. So he's going to be bouncing off the walls. Yeah, boy, that's
well, and so much of the beauty of that show when it is, and now it's done, but was functioning at on high levels, and it's functioned at high levels throughout each season, regardless of whether or not people want to dog later seasons or not. I love all of it. So
I love them all too. Yeah, absolutely.
So there are things, and I have no problem saying there's things I don't like about later seasons, but that's who gives a fuck? Who gives a shit? Those things are things people love. Like people love that stuff just because, you know.
It felt unique. Felt like they're just trying something new. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing I like too, is it's one of those few shows that really was able to navigate a changing landscape and maintain its heart. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. It may not have maintained the same style of humor because, I mean, you know, things have to evolve with time, so you can't stay the same. Right. But I definitely think it maintained its heart through the end, and I think that's the beautiful thing about it. But anyways, getting back to storyboarding on a thing like that, you know, it's like when you have that script on the page, you know, you get as a producer or whatever, you get and reading it and you're like, God, that was a satisfying read. But then as like you put on your producer, your director, and your boarding hat, like you'd be like, okay, put on these 3 hats all at once sometimes, you know, where it's like, okay, like, fuck, how do I make this happen? You know, and that means the script is now a problem that has to be solved. Every line of every action that is indicated, every line of dialogue is a problem that has to be solved. So storyboard artists, the main job, one of the other things that I tell people all the time, you notice I say that a lot. I tell people these things and then they don't listen to me. But one of the things I tell people all the time is that it doesn't matter how well you draw if I don't know what's going on. So when I talked earlier about a stick figure version of the show, if the show doesn't work as circle heads and box bodies, if I look at those rough drawings from an artist and I go, and I don't get what's going on, it's not going to get any better the more pretty it looks. It just isn't. It's just, you know, drawing something pretty just means I sit there and I go like, what are you trying to hide? You know what I mean? What are you trying to show? What are you trying to deflect me from? So the thing that I always try to instill in people, and the thing that I always come back to with stuff like that, is like when we're working on that stuff, when you get 8 people in a room and you're shooting your camera around, you know, because the storyboard artist is the editor, is the director, is the cinematographer, is sometimes even costume and character designer. Because sometimes character design and costume design are running behind the boards, and they'll just look at the boards and be like, oh, we're going to do that. But I don't, again, not to denigrate their wonderful work, but it's just the nature of production is such that sometimes that happens. But for sure, storyboard artist is co-writer. Yes, I said it, co-writer, editor, director, cinematographer, you know, lighting even, you know, it's like figuring out lighting, figuring out like, you know, like where all this shit's going to go. Set designer sometimes, because sometimes we're designing like the look of a room based on the little bit that's in the script, and maybe there's a half a design done before we're boarding, but a lot of times we're boarding and being like, okay, we're gathering ref for this, we're sending it to the designers, you know. And I'm not saying it's always that way, it's just like it can work that way. And so like when you're doing this job, especially in an animated show, or at least my experience, and my experience is my own, but in my experience, having a working, you know, again, going back to what I said, jack of all trades, trying to master some, like having a working knowledge of all this stuff is part of the job and is what we do. And it's like, that's the thing that, like, you know, I didn't spend 12 years learning how to storyboard. I spent 12 years learning how to make a fucking show and how to tell stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, like, where I'm like sitting here and I'm working on music videos, working on short films, working on all this other stuff, and trying to figure out what the world is gonna have to do. Like, I sit there and I go, like, okay, these are all the things that I've learned over this time, and how do they apply to this new situation? So anyone like trying to figure out what they're doing and how to get into storyboarding, I sit there and I say, well, yeah, drawing nice is awesome, but have you written your own script? Have you done, maybe take a script that you found online and storyboard that? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, figure out, like, study lighting, study, you know, all the greats, you know, watch movies that you hate, watch movies that people think are terrible. You learn way more from those than good movies. Like, good movies are awesome and you forget to study them. Bad movies, you're like, I hate this fucking movie. What's going to keep me watching it? I'm going to figure out why it's bad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, that reminds me very much of you drawing in between your shifts back in the day before you went to the school, getting better. And then when you finally got to school, you had a little bit of an edge that made you feel more confident.
Yeah. Well, then to that end, the thing that I also espouse to people, and I try to tell people in any walk of life, is like, so when I first started at Floyd County, it was a studio that made Archer. When I got there in 2012, and I'm doing a bunch of episodes, working, and I'm getting my ass kicked. I'm getting my ass handed to me. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know why. I'm sitting there questioning why they hired me. I'm sure maybe they were questioning me. Questioning that too. I don't know. I knew I wasn't doing well, or at least I knew, for up to my standards, I was not doing well. But at one point, I remember watching the animatic for an episode, and I forget which one, but it was one that had a bunch of action in it, and like I had done a bunch of stuff. And I was fucking furious. I was so pissed. And because all the fucking cool shit that I'd done, all these cool shots, all these cool action things, like all this cool, clever shit that I had done was cut. Sorry. Give me 1 second. The problem with talking this much is I get so much air going, and then I have to, you know, burp and whatever. And then I'm just trying not to verp.
That's what editing's for. You're good.
Yeah. Anyways, so, and I just was like pissed, and I'm like, who the fuck did this? The editor did this. So I went in and I hadn't talked to this dude at all. I basically knocked on his door one day after hours. He was still there working on some stuff, because one of the things that most people don't realize is the one person who works more on the movie than anybody else is probably the editor or editors, and they're, or a TV show, and they are also the ones who they have to look at it thousands upon thousands of times more than you ever will, no matter what you do, other than being the director and the producer. But but even then, the editor still has to deal with it more than they do. So anyways, I go into the editing suite and I sit down. I'm like, hi, I'm Kevin. I believe I'd met the dude before, and he's a wonderful man who I love dearly, and he's a good friend of mine to this day. His name's Pierre. But I sat down with Pierre and I'm like, all right, man, like been watching these animatics, and you're cutting all the good shit. And he kind of got a little bit of a half grin on his face. He's like, all right, nobody tell me how to do my job. He didn't say this, but I could read in his eyes. It was like, please come in here and tell me how to do my job. But I very quickly was like, why? I wasn't coming in to like condescend him. I was mad, but I was also like, I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm giving you the fucking show. Like, this is cool. And in his very succinct fashion, this is who he is, who he always will be, and I love him for it, and I've learned a lot from it. He looked at me very calmly and very politely said, the joke is king, bro. If it's not funny, if it don't make me laugh, I cut it.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah.
Fair enough.
But you get it though. You get it though. Like even I said that. It's like, and you're sitting there, and I just was like, okay, I've been going about this all wrong. And that changed that there was a couple other things that season. That was season 4. That was, I worked part-time in season 3, but that was long distance in from Kansas City, you know, doing whatever. So season 4, I was in studio, but that is one of many moments, but that was one of the main moments that season that was like galaxy brain explosion. Like, oh fuck, I didn't understand what I was doing. And this kid, I mean, he's not a kid, he's my age, but he just fucking schooled me. He's like, joke is king, bro. And I'm like, okay,
Not to keep bringing up Archer. I know we have more to discuss, but
no, dude, we
fan.
can. No, I'm again happy to talk about Archer. Yeah,
but it's so funny when you're describing this action scene that's so great, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm picturing. I can't necessarily name this season. It might be 4, where they're helping with a coup, or actually helping prevent a coup with a dictator and everything like that, and all this shit's breaking loose, and there's a tiger that's loose, and they're trying to protect this one dictator.
5. That's 5.
5. Okay. And then
5 is a whole other animal. Yeah, but yeah, keep going. Yeah,
but Lana's about to give birth. But the whole time I'm thinking like that was all action in that episode. But then when you said Joke is King, I'm like, oh my God, it absolutely wasn't that one. You had a bunch of different things going on.
Yeah.
The action was just moving them from one joke to another.
Yes.
And that was so fantastic. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Season 5 is interesting and special in its own right. There was a bunch of things that happened on that one. So normally, well, the normal up until me and a couple other guys got there, the normal for working on Archer was the 2 art directors were boarding and art directing, plus, so they were boarding plus they had their art direction jobs, but then they were boarding on top of that while they were trying to hire a team of boarders consistently and trying to keep people consistent and do all that. So they really kind of settled into a consistent crew with season 4 with me and a couple other guys. Mm-hmm. And we kind of became like the fucking the rock that kind of team was built on, and not just me alone, like it's me and a couple other dudes, and like that kind of built what the machine of storyboarding that show would be for the rest of its run, right?
Yeah.
And so when season 5 came around, so while we didn't know we were building what that machine was, but when season 5 came around, we had other pilots going on. We had other shows kind of possibility happening. We're making these things. We had most people don't remember the show or never saw it, but there was a show called Chosen about a gay white rapper that we did. I barely worked on it, so my name's on like one episode. But for those who want to look it up, it's it's animated well. So we did a good job animating it. I'll say that. We meaning the company. I didn't touch a fucking thing other than like 2 seconds of the first episode. So anyways, so we've got all that going on. And so like there's a shortage. So all of a sudden our machine team of boarders is now down to me and 2 other guys. And really it's just me and one other guy, because this third person is kind of floating in and out. Right. Mm-hmm. So now we're all of a sudden, and then the studio itself, like we gotten too big, so we have to move locations. So now we're having to board these episodes, plus figure out a studio move, plus figure out like all these other personnel shakeups that are going on, stuff like that. Because when you change studio, when you change place, when you have all this stuff going on, like, sorry, hiccups.
Yeah, you're good.
I apologize for the editing you're having to do on this.
No worries at all. Part of the gig.
Or you just leave it in and let people be like, oh my God, that fucking guy. So anyways, the whole point of me prefacing all of this with all of this is just to get to the episode that I always talk about when people bring up season 5 is, I think, the one that most people want to talk about or hear about, but it's also the one that was the hardest for us to do, but also the one that was the most one of the most rewarding of 12 years of working for that company, 10 seasons of boarding on that show. That one, there's, I believe it's episode 505, and it's the one where they're on the bus with Charlene being chased by the motorcycle gang.
Yep. It was all that was coming up, trust me. That Smoking the Bandit episode.
Yeah. So, this guy named Deke boarded a little bit of it. He boarded kind of the front of it and then maybe a little bit of the end, I think. Deke was one of our rocks. Like, guy's been in the business for fucking forever. He's worked on SpongeBob. He started off doing like backgrounds on the original Batman animated series. Like, dude's done everything. He's an amazing guy, amazing human being. Yeah, he's an amazing. Yeah, Deke Whiteman, WIGHTMAN for those who want to Google him. Deke, DEKA. I don't know what his social media is. I should probably text him and see if he's doing okay. But anyways, so he did a little bit, but me and then the other board artist, guy named Justin Wagner, who later became, in the last couple seasons of the show, was the art director on the show. We were basically left to board the episode, and it's these massive car chases with anywhere from 8 bikers to like 4 to 6 people on buses, like stuff like that. And jokingly, like our bosses were having hell weeks going on with this. So like they didn't really have time to guide us or check in with us. They just had given it to us and we're like, we got to put all these other fires out. And we go to do a review on the first like act or two, like the first, so Archer's a 5-act show. You have the teaser opening, then you have act 1, act 2, act 3, and then you had the little closer, right? Mm-hmm. So that's 5. So we were showing off like the first like 2 acts, you know, and I just remember, you know, one of the bosses standing behind us being like, all right, guys, this better be fucking good. Found out later he was joking. But because he just was giving a shit because like we knew his week and you know whatever. But me and Justin just kind of look at each other like, okay, and then we just started hitting the button on the PDF, you know, and like we get through it, we run through it because when we run through something that people may not know is when you pitch these things, you pitch it like so. If I'm running through, I'm like. Archer says, hey, Pam, why'd you steal my cruller? And Pam's like, shnikes, you know, like we do all that. And then while they're seeing it play forward, because the best way to view a PDF is the best way to view a storyboard is to watch it like it's the show. Yeah. I never understand these people who do this 3 up and like 2 per page, 3 per. I've done it and I do it when asked, but it's not the show. When you watch the show, it's a box with a series of images. Yeah, exactly. So that's how we do boards. That's how we pitch boards. So like, and we always encourage people to do voices just so we have a good time, but nobody has to, you know, but people sometimes do, you know, people try out their Pam impersonation or their Mallory or whatever, you know, it's always hilarious. So anyways, we get through our pitch for that day and that same boss just kind of like, well, fuck, I was kidding, but you guys nailed it. Yeah. So like, and it was because like, it was just one of those things where like, you know, me and Justin like looked at each other, like, you know, like at the beginning of all that and went like, all right, fuck, we got to show the fuck up. We got to show them we can do this. We need to get this done. You know what I mean? We need to make sure it's killer. We need to make sure, you know, and then what that did was it gave us personally, individually confidence to get through the rest of the fucking rest of my career. I will coast off of the gas that gave me for the rest of my life, as you can tell by this conversation, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, like you sometimes don't figure out you can do something until you're put into the worst possible situation and you have to do it. And that, you know, it's like those kinds of deadlines came and went after that, but they never felt as huge or as daunting or as, you know what I mean? Because I'd been through that one. So all the ones that maybe were worse, I didn't know because I had been through that. And so I was like, I did that. I'm going to keep, I got this, you know what I mean? Yeah. And same with the other, and I tried to convey that to the team as well. No matter what team I was directing or what, you know, like baby board artists I'm just hurting along or whatever, you know, it's like, okay, you know, this is going to suck for this week or two, but once you get through it, we're going to have a good laugh. You know what I mean? And it's never sucks in the way that like, you know, like, oh, I hate my job. It sucks. And it's like, oh, this is hard and I have to learn how to do new things. This is hard and I have to figure out how to get through my own ego and my own bullshit. This is hard. I have to deal with other people's egos and bullshit. You know what I mean? Of course. Like, so.
Oh man, that is one of the most memorable episodes, of course. And I'm just thinking of like how hard it must have been to draw like Molotov cocktails going from one car to another and all the different random things and stuff dropping out of the trunk.
I learned, honestly, one of the best things it did for me is it taught me how to convey motion, but especially car chase motion, because it taught me like little things that like, I don't know if this is, I apologize. I don't know if you do a video component to your podcast, but okay, good. So people who can watch this can see like, you know, when you have a car that's like a box, when you turn, it shifts. The wheels do not, but the wheels compress on the heavier side. So like teaching myself, so like when drawing something, if you're just drawing a straight up box to indicate a car, and then I do this a little bit, that conveys movement so much more. And then just doing some like anime fucking lines, you know, coming off of that. So then when I went to draw the cars much nicer, I already had this like blueprint of like, oh, this already feels like a weighty thing that is shifting and doing this cool thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and the original drawing was just some circles for the wheels, a box for the body that I then, you know, did this to, and, you know, and then did some foreshortening as it comes around, you know, I mean, stuff like that. And also just a lot of like I forget, people make fun of the Fast and Furious franchise, but I will sit there and I just watched Fast X for the first time the other day, and I would chop out every car chase in that and hand it to somebody and be like, study this, study it. Like I'm not sitting here saying it's fucking high. Well, it is high art because you know how fucking good you have to be at your job to make something like that. You may not like that movie and you may shit on it as a piece of pop culture, but they don't make these things in a vacuum of trying to make a bad thing. They're trying to make a good thing. Right. And arguably, when you look at like the technical competence and prowess of making something like that, especially these car chases, that car chase, like, honestly, I would put that fucking thing of where he jumps that car off of the Hoover Dam and then rides down the Hoover Dam with the fucking explosion. I'm like, I would have paid $20 to sit in a theater and watch that 2 minutes alone.
Yeah.
But also when you watch the fucking dynamics of the car, and they're cartooning. It's a cartoon. Like it's a Kira. It's a cartoon. It's fucking Looney Tunes, Watch how they're doing all that stuff and but they're showing you physical weight when that car hits, even though a real life car's tires would blow out and the rims would fly off and all that stuff.
Of course.
Doesn't matter. They're sitting there. They're still showing you. Hit my mic. They're showing you the physics of what would happen, and you can learn from that. And I think that's incredible. But at the time, season 5, this would have been 2013-ish, 2014-ish, somewhere in there. So we're watching the Fast 5 movie. We're watching the Fast movies. But I grew up on Steve McQueen. I grew up on Smokey and the Bandit. I grew up, you know what I mean? So it's like Dirty Larry.
Steve McQueen to come up.
Yeah. And we did an episode in either 6 or 7. I forget. We did an episode where I literally got paid to rip off Bullet. Like the script said, do as many shots for shot as we can from Bullet, and it's the episode with Lana's parents.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember which episode. I can Google, but I'm lazy. But it's the episode with Lana's parents, and so the mandate from Adam Reed, the writer and creator of the show, in the script was do as many shots from Bullet as you can. The one thing that was great was he did not require them to be in order, which that's great because then it allowed us the purview of like, this shot here works great here. This shot that actually happens later, but it works greater, stuff like that. Yeah. So if you watch that episode of Archer and then you watch Bullet, you can find the places where we were just fucking like, yes, we directly lifted shots. So
I know,
and that was one of the best episodes to work on because I'm a huge fucking Bullet fan. I'm a huge fucking Steve McQueen fan. That dude was cool as shit. So yeah.
There's one of them where they do the jump and then like the bad guys, I think in the van or whatever, jump and hit in the water off this big ramp, and then all of a sudden it's the same shot again, and Archer calls it out. He's like, "Wait, is that the same shot again?" And it's just like
that's a later season. Yeah, that's a later season. Yeah. That's a later one. I forget what season. That's probably. I might be wrong. That might be 13, maybe 12.
Okay,
might be 13. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I think I helped board that scene. I think I did revisions on that scene. Because we had some boards on it and then I had to come back. I think I had to do some fixes on it. But unless they did it again and I'm just not unless we did it another time, then I'm forgetting. But I think it was season 13. So yeah.
I tell you what, Kevin, if you ever want to start an Archer podcast, you ring me up. I'm down to do it.
Yeah. I probably should, but like it's one of those things where like I feel like I could definitely do a podcast and I would probably hit 100 episodes and not even get past like the first like season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Sorry, you have so much stuff else you wanted to get to, but also we've ran so much longer than you wanted to. So what do you?
That's okay. I put that time out there for people who,
Well, and I told you I talk long.
I'm happy with this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get people pointed into what you have coming out pretty soon. So
sure.
Obviously a lot of us have watched Hitmonkey season 1. Bryce is very Sterling Archer. We have season 2 coming up. What can we expect out of season 2?
If you liked season 1, then season 2 is only going to tickle your fancy that much more. Unfortunately, I can't really talk plot stuff, but the thing I can talk is Jason Sudeikis is a goddamn mastermind of comedic genius. I will say, and I'm not telling tales out of school to when I talk about this, but being in. Obviously, we had to do them over Zoom because of circumstances, but being in Zoom recording sessions and watching that guy prep and do his thing, he's a master. And he's a master because like he spent so much time at Second City, so much time at Saturday Night Live. He his ability, I will say the one thing that I think people don't I know, and not think, but one thing I know people do not expect with Hitmonkey, and they definitely are going to get so much more of this in season 2. They got a little bit in season 1. They're getting a lot of it in season 2, is his ability to switch from making you laugh your fucking nuts off to making you cry. Like, he is a mastermind of the emotion switch like that. Like, he'll make a joke and then and then all of a sudden you're like, why am I crying at a cartoon? You know what I mean? And he's great. The other thing about season 2 that I think is amazing and I'm excited for people to see is Leslie Jones' character. She plays a pretty big role in season 2, and there's a heart and depth there that I really think that, having seen a bunch of her Saturday Night Live stuff, like, and I don't know much about her movie career, but mostly just knowing her for Saturday Night Live, I think there's a heart and depth there that people just may not expect from her as well. She's funny as shit. Yeah. That's the easy part. She's funny. Yeah. That's easy for her. But there's a heart and depth there that I think people will be cool.
That's great, yeah. On SNL, mostly you could tell Lauren was like, "Be loud, be funny," and she's like, "Got it, I know what I'm getting paid for." So it's
she
cool
was very much paid to fill it. Yeah, she's very much paid to fill a very specific role, and she did it to a T. And I don't blame her for also leaving to not have to do that anymore. But she was cast on Monkey, I believe, to not only do that, but to add the depth and emotion that the show needed in a way that Jason isn't going to be able to provide, or Olivia's not going to be able to provide, and Monkey, the guy, Fred Tatasciore, who does almost every animal voice in Hollywood. It's crazy. But and Fred's amazing, and he gets a lot of emotion out of Monkey. But her character Eunice is exciting. The other thing about the show is it's the tough part about season 1 was it had everything going against it because it's on Hulu. It's not a part of the proper Marvel canon. You know what I mean? And I think that that's even more of a problem now because it's still on Hulu and it's still like there's the only holdover Marvel character is Lady Bullseye from season 1, and it's one of those things where it's like, in season 1, we were fortunate enough to use a couple more Marvel characters, and in season 2, it's like we got to use what we got to use, which was Lady Bullseye. So it's one of those things where, like, we don't have the cachet of like people being like, oh, Deadpool's in it or Wolverine's, stuff like that. So that's the uphill battle that I think also, and maybe my coworkers will disagree, but I think they would agree. But the thing I think that works for it is it's not beholden to anybody else's bullshit. We've made our own little world here. We've done so much with these characters and infused them with so much of a life and a purpose beyond what's going on in the rest of the MCU that I feel like if the universe wills it, the show could go on for a couple seasons and never have to acknowledge any of the other bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't need to fit into this gear spot. Yeah. It could be its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is its own thing, as I think really is what I was getting at. Yeah. And you nailed it right there. Like and I think I know that all this is very vague, and it's very vague intentionally because I can't talk about plot points and I can't talk about what happens in season 2 other than to say that there's some amazing sequences that I feel very, as director on season 2 and as someone who worked, hand in hand with storyboard artists and worked hand in hand with producers and, my supervising directors on trying to tell the best story we could. I am immensely proud of what everyone did and the work that we as a team, because it is, it's like there's, over 100+ people that work to make this show happen. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it certainly is not something I could do. You know what I mean? I'm happy to have been a part of it, but yeah.
I'm just so happy for season 2. Not to bring up a whole other show, but MODOK also kind of the same situation, where it's Hulu and Marvel, but not Marvel, right? And so MODOK, I know not getting a season 2, so I'm happy to see Hitmonkey get a season 2.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know the MODOK guys at all, really, other than just being fans of their work. But that whole slate was announced with 4 shows, and of which only 2 made it to air, which was MODOK and Us. And I really wish Howard the Duck had happened. I think that would have been a fun show. Maybe there's something in the cards for Howard the Duck to happen at some point in the future, because I really feel like that's a character and at least the type of show that I had wanted based on knowing who was involved. I would have wanted more of that show anyways. But it was us and MODOK, and then seeing MODOK not get renewed was a little heartbreaking. But also the landscape of what kind of TV was getting made was changing so fast at that point, and none of us knew pandemic was happening.
Yeah,
none of us knew that was going to come. So
pandemic, and then a strike just a couple years later on, which shifts the entire landscape, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and weirdly, the strikes were not a bad thing. Just to clarify for people, I think the strikes were a good thing. The repercussions from, how do I word this diplomatically? The repercussions from the strikes from a top level down, plus the economic realities of day-to-day business in the United States have made it so that me and thousands upon thousands of others. You look up any Deadline or .com or Variety or Hollywood Reporter, or go to IO9 or what's the video game one, Gizmo, not
IGN.
Gizmodo, but IGN. Thank you. And you will see stories about studios either closing or laying off every other day, if not every day, but generally, every couple of days, there's just laying off 10%, laying off 30%, closing this division, so, and that's animation, games, like whatever. So there's so many things happening right now in the industry, and so many people, like, I'm lucky, I'm fortunate that I have the place that I'm living in right now with my partner and our family and stuff like that. There's so many other people who are hurting and doing so much worse, and it's one of those things where I can only hope that people realize the value that this kind of escapism entertainment has, and means in their lives, and that they express that in a way, whether it's through social media or whatever, that lets these people know, hey, don't cut these things, spend on it, because we need it. We want to watch it,
1000% agree. Yeah, we have to be vocal when we want. Not Orville is like this thing that I keep hashtag save Orville every few weeks.
Great show. Yeah,
that's a shame.
Great show. Well, and it's like there's shows. Well, I mean, I just read an article the other day about Netflix and how, I have no issues with Netflix, whatever, but like Netflix and how they cancel all these shows after one season, and we've lost, and this isn't just a Netflix problem, it's an everybody problem. But there's so many economic realities that go into it, but the human reality that I feel like there's not enough conscience given to, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, because I'm sitting here in a basement in Kansas, but I'm probably wrong. But the thing that I think about when I read all these things about numbers and metrics and all this other stuff is, like, you aren't thinking about how many lives this affected.
Yeah.
Not only in making it, but making it to watching it. Mm-hmm. And when you put a dollar amount on that, fuck, man, that's just gross. It just gets gross. And I get it. That's what a business is. That's what a business does. Every business does it, whether you're selling gas or stickers. It doesn't matter. Every business does it. But when it comes to entertainment and stuff like this, like, so many, I think I get like passionate about it, because so much of the stuff that I love the most is stuff that never got a second chance. Is stuff that's like, I'm not getting more of this show. I'm not getting another of these movies. I'm not getting, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think of it that way. Yeah.
And then if you look again with Netflix, if you look at things that today would not have gotten a second season, but back when Netflix was just, we need our own content, BoJack Horseman would never have gotten a second season. That is just such a weird show.
Probably not.
But after 8 seasons, it's some of the best drama storytelling out there that needed its time to breathe and develop its characters.
That's what I call, well, I don't call it this, a bunch of people call it this, but that's why I subscribe to the Adult Swim model, because there are so many shows on Adult Swim that they were just like, no, we believe in this. Give it another few episodes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's how you end up with fucking 20 goddamn years of Aqua Teen. You know what I mean? Is because it's like no way that show should have gone beyond one season.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, Squidbillies, Metalocalypse, all these shows that just give them time, and then all of a sudden Metalocalypse has an entire world story that's beyond just rock and rollers.
But let's talk about Squidbillies for like 2 seconds. Not only did that one go on for so long, but also it supported a ton of people in my life when they had nothing else to do. There was work on Squidbillies. You know what I mean? The same thing with Archer. This, obviously up until the end, obviously, but like that show supported so many people's lives when the industry, because the industry hasn't just gone to shit this last year, it's gone to shit many other years in the past.
Right.
It's just egregiously bad now. Mm-hmm. And so and when you don't have these kind of evergreen workhorse shows, you lose talent and you lose the training ground for new talent. Because not only do these shows function on people who have been around for forever, they function on the ability to bring in new blood and train them to go be badasses on other shit, Yeah. So
that's what was the big loss with the Arrowverse, the CW shows, where it was like 22 episodes. You don't see 22 episodes anymore in a season. A lot of Canada jobs, everybody was on deck. It was great. Yeah.
Dude, well, that's the thing, is that was all going on while I was boarding Vampire Diaries, Black Lightning, Legacies, and Dynasty. Those were 22 episode shows, and I was boarding on Vampire Diaries. I was boarding at least every other episode. Mm-hmm. And also, the thing that I didn't tell your audience is that I was doing that while working a full-time on Archer. So you know what I mean? And I did Black Lightning was 13 episodes the first season, and I boarded at least 10 or 11 of them. Also while working on Archer, that's sort of, and it's cool as shit. But also, it literally tells you I had no life for those 4 to 5 years.
I'm talking as a fan. I loved Black Lightning.
Remind me in email, and I'll send you my boards for season 1. I've got like a whole PDF that's all of them.
Oh, what's happening?
Just remind me. I'll send it to you, because it's fun stuff to look at, because it looks like a fucking it looks like a comic book. It looks like a Black Lightning comic. I was going somewhere with this. The 22 episode season thing. I'm a big fan of that, because I grew up with that, but also I'm a big fan of the shorter stuff, the shorter seasons. One of the many things I agreed with about the writer's strike was the whole, you're wanting us to do 22 episodes worth of work for the pay of 6, but you're only making 13. There's all this wonky math that's going on, and I completely understood that, and I support that. I remember having a conversation with my dad a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "So, do you think the strikes were worth it?" Because he's very anti all that. He basically was wanting me to say no, it wasn't worth it, and I was like, no, it was totally worth it. All the shit that they were asking for, they were probably a few years too late in asking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think they knew it too, and they got what they could based on that. But it's one of those things where, as a storyboard artist, as a director, as someone whose my ideas and my brain and my hands are how I make a living, watching companies, being so willing to adopt AI and being so willing to denigrate they have trained those AI on us, but that AI does not have our experience. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's trained on our work. It's not trained on our experience. So it gets into a real tough bit with me. I'm not anti-AI, but I am conflicted, obviously. So
absolutely, that's the thing, is I've talked to a lot of comic book artists and stuff like that, and we generally talk off mic or whatever, but like, hey, what do you feel about AI and how it's coming? And it's like, it's something we're concerned about. That being said, I work hand in hand with it, like with SEO optimization and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a time and place, but you hate to see it replace the creative side of things. Like, do the grunt work, whatever, but do my creative stuff.
Yeah, the thing I always tell people is it's a tool. So if you are sitting there, and the greatest example is, I was just watching a YouTube video where someone said they wrote a song with AI.
Yeah.
I mean,
they told the AI to do the job for them at that point.
They wrote country, comma, rock, comma, country rock, comma, ballad, comma, heartstrings, comma, like Dolly
Yeah.
Parton, comma, like,
Sound like Dolly Parton. Yeah.
no, you didn't. I write fucking songs. Like,
Yeah.
I write songs, and songwriting is fucking hard. You didn't
Okay.
do shit. Like,
Yeah.
I agree with the term prompt jockey. Like that, it's like, but I'm not trying to denigrate people who are excited about it and that's how they make their living. But I think that like like any tool, once you understand its function in your world and in the world at large, it makes it more useful. And I do think AI can be a completely useful tool. The thing I tell AI tech, I have done meets with AI tech people. I've had meetings where they ask me questions and they talk to me about like, how would you use this as a person working in television, as a storyboard artist and all this stuff? And I go, no, it's fun to mess around with, but I can't
Yeah.
use this. And here's the biggest thing that they don't ever fucking think about. And well, they do, but they dismiss it. And until it becomes what I'm about to say, they will continue to dismiss it. But I can, even no matter what licensing they say they have, no matter what agreements they say they have, no matter what contracts they say they have, I cannot use AI in the generation of anything that I'm going to put on TV without fear of being sued, and I will get sued at some point. All of it, big tech people just goes right by them. Just goes right fucking by them. And it's the most annoying part about having people want to talk to you and then seeing their eyes glaze over when you say stuff like that is like,
Yeah.
you don't understand. You need to start thinking like a record company and not like a fucking tech person. Because a record label, they think about, okay, will this get me sued? A TV studio, they think about, will this get me sued? You need to start thinking about that because that's going to be a problem sooner rather than later. Even as fast as AI is proliferating, as fast as it's becoming a daily part of our lives. Like I'm fucking stoked about I am not in on AI in the way that anybody else is. But when I watched that Apple keynote, I was like, all right, they actually have done this in a way that will make it useful for my life.
Yeah.
The first time I've ever said that about anything AI related. Yeah. So so it's not like I can't be swayed. It's just more like, but I'm sitting there going like, yeah, but I'm also like, I have the benefit of like it's actually faster for me to draw something than it is to ask AI to come
up. But there's definitely
so I have
yeah. I mean, there's like even with image creation, they're seeing more and more of that little Getty Images, boy, talk about the lawsuit company. You keep seeing that little random box pop up in certain corners. You're like, that random box is because it was trained off of Getty Images. You can't lie to us on that. They're more known for their logo on pictures than the pictures themselves.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I don't know. I think it's one of those things. Talk to me in 6 months when the world is completely changed, which if we had had this conversation 6 months ago, I would have said the same thing. Talk to me in 6 months,
Yeah.
Because it's changing so fast now that like even saying 6 months is probably being generous as far as, how fast shit, or probably not being generous enough as far as how fast shit's going. But
no.
I totally derailed wherever that was going.
That's okay. Let's return back to Hitmonkey for just a little bit here.
Yeah, please.
You're going from storyboarding to directing. How has that shift changed how you work on the show? Are you? I kind of feel like you might be more valuable to them because you had that storyboarding expertise and can work with them.
Very much so. Sorry. So yeah. I don't know. I wish I knew how other shows worked. That's the one thing about working for mostly one production company for 12 years, because the live action stuff works differently. So it's a different animal. But with our production company, with Floyd County, the pipeline to directing, the straightest path for a long time, and this changed in the last few years, but the straightest path in a long time was storyboard artist. So be a storyboard artist, then you can move into directing. And that's what I did. That is exactly what I did. I put it off for several years. There were several years where they tried to move me into a directing path that I was just like, no, I see how much work this is. I am not ready for this. I do not want to do that. Like I legit said, like, no, y'all fucking live in Google spreadsheets. I don't see you drawing anything. No. Eventually came a point where I did want to make that move, and I'm glad I did. But I still fucking hate Google spreadsheets. I hate Google Docs. I hate fucking whatever. It all fucking sucks. But it is the name of the game, and it's how you get things done.
Yeah.
But you don't need to board to direct. You need to know how to talk to boarders. You need to understand what we do, which is solve problems. And you need to understand how to effectively communicate what you want when there is a problem that isn't being solved. So boarders communicate with boarders very well. They communicate visually. They communicate, I can sit there, and if I have an artist that they've turned something in 3 times in a row and they're still not getting it, then fuck it. I'm working overtime and I'm going to fix it for them. I hand it back the next morning and they're like, hey, do it like this. And they're like, oh shit, that's so much easier. I wish I'd thought of that. I'm like, me too. The next time they do think of it, that's the thing though, is they learn. Right. So you have to be in a position where if you're not a boarding director, you at least need to have a workman-like understanding of the language, which means sitting in on meetings, sitting in on pitches, being a part of pitches, which means giving notes and then having the boarder come back to you and being like, I don't know what the fuck this means. Explain this better. You know what I mean? Yeah. Stuff like that, So I would say, while we did definitely work to adjust the company culture to move people into directing that did not start out in boarding or did not have a wealth of boarding experience, and they're phenomenal directors. But I do believe that they would not have had as much of a leg up in the directing experience had they not done the work to understand the boarding process. And in animation especially, understand that boarding is co-writing, it's directing, it's cinematography, it's editing, it's so much as editing, and editing is rewriting. That's the one thing that most people don't understand about the editor's job. The editor is a co-writer. I listen to all these fucking podcasts with people and they're fucking talking up the writer and the director. And I'm like, no, fucking go talk to the editor. He's the one who, like, one of my favorite movies is Usual Suspects. The end of that fucking movie was crafted by the editor.
Yeah.
It didn't exist on the page. It was crafted by the goddamn editor. He's a phenomenal editor. You know what I mean? And the writer of the movie tells you that. He will sit there and say, no, I didn't write that. That was come up by Joe. I forget what his last name is. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those, and again, to take it back full circle to the conversation I mentioned earlier, where I had a conversation with the editor on Archer at that time, Pierre, where I was like, hey, you're nixing my stuff and I'm telling the story here and I'm doing all this cool shit. I'm doing what the script asks for. I'm doing all this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He's like, wasn't funny. Joke is king, bro. Like it's like, if we don't need it, it goes. And so much of my lessons on directing on Hitmonkey have been like sitting there going like, we got to cut the fat, or like, oh shit, we're missing these beats. Like we need these emotional beats here that just are not landing. They weren't in this, either they weren't in the script or they're not, in the boards, the intent in the boards is not coming through. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you find so much of that out through editing. And I think I lost track of your question, but I think I also answered it a little bit.
You answered it there, but yeah, okay. but if we're talking about like with Hitmonkey, I think a really good example of this is, of course, when Hitmonkey's doing his assassinations, it looks dope. It just looks cool. Yeah. But the heart of that show was Monkey sitting there with Bryce on his shoulder, essentially, right, and kind of wisecracking about the situation around him. Like that's the heart of the show. That's what's going to get you going from one point to another.
The heart of the show is their relationship, because for those who haven't seen it, spoilers for episode 1, but Monkey's family gets assassinated by people who are trying to and ultimately kill Bryce. Bryce becomes a ghost and in his death moment becomes attached to Monkey. So now Monkey takes it on himself to go and become a killer of killers. And Bryce is this ghost that helps him do it and also provides Bryce is an assassin, so he provides guidance and help while also providing jokes and quips. But also Bryce has his own fucked up past that you find a little bit out in season 1. You find out way more about in season 2. That that has so much to do with paralleling with what Monkey is going through, and there are writers on the show. So of course they do this intentionally. Yeah. We work as visual people to do it even more intentionally. We just try to make it all come through. So
yeah, I'm excited. That's wonderful. And then also let's make sure to touch on some of the music video stuff you're doing right now. You got the sound and the Fury. How's that working out?
Good. So this band that I know, I've known them for a long time. We kind of came up playing in shows together in the late 90s, early 2000s. But yeah, they got back. They'd been disbanded for a while and they got back together last year, and then they had started making some music, and I'm good friends with the drummer for sure. But then it came about they're making these new tunes, and I've, in the wake of the animation and live action world and not having as much work for people like me, I've been making work. So I've been shooting. I shot a music video for the voice contestant and Casey Nashville resident Kate Cosentino. That's called Swim. So that's out on YouTube. And then I've done a couple other things, but one of the other things is the Sound and the Fury had me do their latest video for their song called The Alpha and Omega. Bunch of rad dudes. Got them on a sound stage with an LED wall for a couple days and just shot shit out of it, and I think it's a lot of fun. I think even they're a Midwestern rock band, and it's really, the song itself is kind of talking about that. Honestly, we just talked about the AI stuff. It's totally talking about technology and AI. It meets kind of like religion, kind of that Venn diagram of like what's your master, what's your God, what are you taking orders from, that sort of thing, and kind of the kind of looking at it from a bit of a harder edge. And we do a little bit of that in the video, but honestly, the video is mostly just kind of a fun, like, them having a fun performance. So
when you're doing a music video, like I'm looking back at, like, I mean, let's go Thriller, right? They're probably the most famous music video ever.
Yeah.
It felt like they were using the music video to tell a story that maybe even the song wasn't necessarily hitting on. Do you feel like today you're trying to tell a story as much, or trying to just invite people into this cool world?
A little bit of both. I always want there to be a story. The biggest thing that goes up against that is time and budget. So it really comes down to the music videos that I've been doing have been kind of more emotional stories rather than literal stories. So there's just like an emotional through line of performance and of either graphics or like something, something I'm directing the artist to do in the shots, whatever. So I think that's kind of where the things have been coming through. But when I get bigger budgets to do stuff, I'm going to be doing fucking Beastie Boys Sabotage type shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Or it's either that or Meatloaf. Like I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Like I'd be doing that kind of, what I mean? Yeah. I want big, like emotive, grand thing. I mean? Like shit like that'd be cool. So
as an older millennial, you're hitting my Beastie Boys all day.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it, but Falling in Reverse dropped a music video a couple weeks ago called Ronald, and it's just fucking wild and crazy. Check it out. It's all this CG. It honestly looks better than some recent CG big budget movies. Yeah. But I'm sitting there going, like, I'm watching this thing and I'm like, this thing is batshit insane, and I wish I could do 1/10 of what this video is doing. Like I would, you know what I mean? So like there's things happening now in music video world where I'm like, oh, this needs to, like, we need more of this in the world, and I think that as the barrier to entry to doing CG stuff gets lower and lower, it's a bad thing in the sense of, like, there are true artists out there, the true craftspeople that, like, that have worked, much like we've talked about. Like I've worked all these years, and they're going to replace me with AI on boards and on directing and on whatever, and script writing and all that. But also the other thing is like the barrier to entry on some of this stuff, like using Blender, using, CGI, all that stuff is low, that like I could sit here and I could do something in my house, and I think that's cool. So,
yeah. Do you feel like so one of my recent memories of a really good practical effect in a music video is Kendrick Lamar's Humble. He has like this gimbal that quickly moves with his head as he goes. Do you feel
those gimbals are amazing.
Isn't that cool? It looks so amazing too.
Dude, yeah. I haven't seen it in person, but there's one of those here in Kansas City. I forget what the company is. They do amazing. They've done a bunch of music videos for my buddies. I'm buddies with the dudes in The Devil Wears Prada, the metal band. Mm-hmm. So there's a group here in Kansas City that has one of those, and it's like a time track. So they can sit there and they can tell the camera where to be in 3D space at any given time, and they map it out. And it's basically, they map it out like a fucking map, maps, and tell it where to go. And it'll just go, and you just make sure that the actor's not in the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that they're, it's fucking rad. I don't know where you were going with that, but
do you have more of an appreciation for when they can master something with practical effects over CGI? Or do you just see like, hey, they're both evolving and it's awesome?
Yeah. Okay. So a good example is I just watched The Fall Guy, right? And the Fall Guy is a ton of practical effects, car chases, fight scenes, stuff like that. But I I was torn because I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. Like, it was big dumb fun. Like, I love big dumb fun movies. It was big dumb fun. I was torn though because I could fucking feel when it was CG. You know what I mean?
And recently too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the shit out of Furiosa, but there was a couple of moments. That I don't know what I expected, but it was not the movie I expected, and I still had a really, really good time. But it was it was wild. There was definitely like. I feel like in Fury Road, the only shot that I felt the CG was the guitar coming at the screen, and they did that because of the 3D. They did that because of the 3D screenings. That's the only shot out of that whole fucking 2 hours. Whereas in Furiosa, there's definitely a bunch of stuff where I was just like, okay, this is a bunch of plates. And then in Fall Guy, I felt that's the things I felt in. But my God, that shit's functioning on such a high level that I'm sitting here nitpicking something that like.
Yeah. That's like, look, when I watch a Furiosa, a movie that I absolutely loved and had a lot of fun with. I'm like, color grading was a little dark on this one. Well, who gives a shit, Frank? Why do you care so much about the color grading on this? Like, come on. Obviously, you're having fun with it.
Man, that makes me wonder about your theater. That makes me wonder about your theater because I didn't have that issue at all.
To me, it just felt like, everything's a little more orange. Maybe they're trying to hide some of the.
You know what though? I did have. I see that because I did see people. I didn't see it on my screening, but I heard a bunch of complaints about the orange. So because I actually went into the theater expecting that because I'd seen so many people bitch about it. So I'm wondering if mine had been tuned differently because I didn't get that. Okay. So yeah. The only weird thing about it, the only thing that I left the movie with, like being like, that is just so weird, is the fact that they spoilers for anybody who wants to fast forward for like a minute. But the dude playing the guy that trains her hiring a guy that looks like Mel Gibson to do that, like I say, that's fucking weird.
Yeah, I know. And then we had a little cameo of Max up on there.
Played by another dude, played by a wholly other dude. Yeah, yeah.
It was Tom Hardy's stuntman that they actually had play that role.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And it was a strange. And then it's a lot of fun. It's good. I thought having the end credits scenes having Fury Road in it was so weird to me. I
enjoyed it. I luckily just watched Fury Road beforehand, but if I hadn't, I thought it would have been, that'd been pretty cool to remind everybody.
I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it, so I get a different perspective on it, because I left the theater going like, I don't understand why they did that. So anyways,
man, George Miller, he's saying he wants to do a Thor, and I'm just like, please give him the keys. I would love to see what that would look like.
Man, I feel like that would be it would be awesome if he did it, and I hope he lives to do, but I feel like that would be such a waste of his time to do something for somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
I mean, more Mad Max. Yeah. Fair.
Yeah. Make more, make another Happy Feet. I don't know. Or not Happy Feet, but Babe, whatever the fuck it was that, make shit that I don't know, there's stuff that is uniquely his point of view. And that's the best, the best stuff that he's done and why we talk about it all these years later,
Yeah. Imagine the storyboarding for those semi-truck crazy runs on Mad Max.
So I looked in the credits and I think, sorry. Mm-hmm. So I think on this one, so Fury Road was he listed as co-writers his storyboard artists. I'm forgetting their names right now, but if you look up who co-wrote the movie, Brendan McCarthy is one, and then there's another guy. Those two guys are storyboard artists, and so that's why because they spent a decade storyboarding that movie. There was no real script. They boarded that movie out. I don't know. I get the sense that this one had more of a script, but looking at the credits, I believe he previs this one in 3D rather than doing the whole conventionally storyboarded drawn out. I believe this one was done in 3D previs, like just because there's no storyboard artist listed that I could see in the credits that I watched, but the main portion of story credit and storyboard previs stuff was all 3D stuff, Blender and Maya and all that shit. So. I'm curious. I would hope to be wrong. I would hope there was, but but I do know that with Fury Road, his storyboard artists were co-writers. Like he credited them.
That is so cool that he did that. Yeah. At 10 years too. I never know. That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, because they started in the 90s, like early 2000s, because they were going to do it with Mel. Like they were going to make a Mel Fury Road. Like, And then, obviously shit happens and the world changes and people get older and make crazy bad decisions when they get arrested. So, but yeah.
That's right. Tom Hardy's going to do well with the next one. I fully trust him.
I just saw a preview for a new movie that dude's in. I forget what it was, but I'm just like, this dude can do. Oh, well, I saw this. So I saw the Venom preview, but there's another, which is batshit and hilarious.
It's fireworks. You go for the fireworks, you don't go for the story. Yeah.
I like the Venom movies for his acting, because that dude just buys into what he's doing and just does it fully. And I'm like, this is why I love you. This is why you're amazing.
In Peaky Blinders, you're like, your character's insane at this point, dude. And he's just like, fuck yeah, it is.
Yeah. And he does the weird accent shit that's fucking awesome. And like every character is just some weird version of Bane, and I love it. But no, there's some other movie that he's got coming out, some indie film. Whatever, you can cut this because I can't remember what it was. But anyways, there's a new preview where I just was floored by his acting, his character stuff, because the reason why he works in Fury Road is they had dialogue and they just didn't do it, or they didn't use it because it doesn't need it. Like you go off of that face.
Yeah.
Same thing with
Mel did
Charlize.
The same thing.
Charlize is and Mel did the same thing. Yeah, Mel's face is to this day. Mel's face, like I was watching some shitty movie on Netflix or Prime or whatever, where it's a bad remake of Talk Radio, where he's like a radio host and they're gonna kill somebody and he's got to stop them from doing whatever, that kind of like whatever. Go watch Eric Bogosian's Talk Radio if you want a good version of this movie. But anyway, Mel's face is amazing to watch. Like he's such an emotive actor, even when you're like, I know you're full of shit, he's doing the thing. Like, yeah.
Well, okay, Kevin, I think we have to call this at some point. As much as I would love to just keep chatting with you.
Hey, I warned you. You didn't want to believe me, but I warned you. So, yeah.
All right, so I want to have everybody point in the right direction. We have we've got Hit Monkey season 2. It's going to be on Hulu, guys, in July
15th.
July 15th. And then can you shout out the band again one more time so everybody can? I'll make sure the links in the description for everybody too.
Yeah. They're called The Sound and the Fury. I believe their socials, it's like The Sound and the Fury family, that kind of thing. But he'll put the links below. Their single is out on all streaming platforms. It's called Alpha and Omega. I directed the music video. If you want an easy way to watch it, go to kevinmellon.rocks. And then if you look under my tab, like there's a directing tab, a storyboard tab. If you go under directing, it's kevinmellon.rocks/directing. And then you can watch it there. You can also watch the video for Swim by Kate Cosentino, and then a couple other fun things that I've done.
Yeah. So it's a great website, guys. Check it out. It has everything on there. Director, short film, all the cool stuff. So make sure you guys check that out. Again, links in the description. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Kevin.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, guys. We will see you guys next week. Bye.